Welcome back, Honors. Oh, so good to see you guys again. All right, so good to bounce some stuff back and forth off of you so we can understand this thing that obviously y'all can tell that if I had to be a in-depth expert in anything, it would probably be the French Revolution. I know the king on a personal level. I feel an immense amount of pity for him, really a lot of pity for him. And he's just such a guy. Dude just didn't even know what to do. And then I also feel bad for Marie. You know what I mean? Now, but as you can tell, I'm very emotionally attached to the French Revolution, right? And so this is the first of two flips that you're going to have over break. I'm going to record both of them right now. I'm going to have a short break in the middle of them just so you know exactly what's going on and stuff, and so we can get into it a little bit more. But our goal right now is to get up to the violence in the beginning of the revolution by the time that you get back to school, all right? So what we're probably going to do in this flip, we're going to get up to the outline of the third estate, and we're going to get up to the calling of the Estates General, right? And then in the second flip, we're going to talk about the Estates General up to the storming of the Bastille, which I hate that I don't get to tell you in class, but whatever, I get it. All right, so instead we'll talk about the possibility of people being on drugs when they were rioting for bread. All right, so now anyway, so the biggest thing that we're going to start off with is where we left off in class, right? Our third estate, got them. When I talked to you about them being, what is their name? Everybody else, or everybody else. You can spell it one of two ways, right? So you can spell it E-R apostrophe B-O-D-Y else, or you can spell it E-R-Y B-O-D-Y, everybody. Now, anyway, so everybody else is in the third estate. Now, quick review, right? France is in trouble. They are in massive financial debt. We're going to go in depth into why they're in so much debt in this flip. We're going to go into that. We are also going to... Oh! My legs. Oh, by the way, how cute and adorable is my little Endymion football that I caught, which has fleur-de-lis on it, which is actually going to die in the French Revolution. Of course, the direct representation of the monarchy. It's a lily flower, and that symbol will die in the French Revolution as a symbol of the royal house of France. And somebody right now, I guarantee, watching this was like, but we still use it in New Orleans. Yeah, because when New Orleans was colonized, there was still a monarchy system under them, right? And plus, it's cute, so why get rid of it? So anyway, now... But, so, getting into it, though, we talked about the roles that are in power. We talked about the division of French society under the Ancient regime, right? So talking about how they had, a few different classes. The first class being the clergy, estates. The first estate being the clergy, the second estate being the nobles, and the third estate being, of course, everybody else. But hi, I'm Mr. Terry. Have we met? Are we gonna leave it at just everybody else? No, of course not. All right, so we got to go in a little bit more depth. All right, so French society super divided. All right, so the we need to talk about the three classes that exist within the third estate. Right. So the three classes that exist inside of the third estate are as follows. All right, the biggest one, the most important one that you need to understand is the bourgeoisie. All right? I'm going to say it again, and I want you to repeat after me. Bourgeoisie. Good job, Angelica Ramirez and Sophie Stubbs. I heard y'all over there. All right, so yeah, anyway, now. So the bourgeoisie, they're the most important one. They're the most important one because they're the ones that are going to really start this revolution. They're going to pollute the airwaves, right? Eminem song? Yeah, no big deal. All right, so anyway, the biggest thing about them is they are this growing middle class, right? So we talked about this in class the other day. There are only two things that the nobles paid taxes on, and that's salt and land, right? So the bourgeois, on the other hand, are the ones paying most of the taxes on everything else. Now, the bourgeois are the people that were not wealthy enough to buy their way into the nobility classes, but they are the wealthiest of the third estate, right? So the bourgeois is a direct product of all of the, colonialism and the growth of private companies and the growth of this commercial revolution that's occurring during this time period. And they are prosperous. They're bankers, they're merchants, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're manufacturers to an extent. Like their manufacturers, like they own these like pseudo factories that exist during this time period. They aren't really like full-fledged factories yet, because the Industrial Revolution actually during this time period, if you could do me a huge favor, over in the side somewhere, just a little star, is occurring in Great Britain while all this is going on, but it hasn't made its way over to continental France yet, right? Now, ironically enough, had the Industrial Revolution made its way over to France earlier, this revolution might have got kicked off a little bit sooner, all right? So now, anyway, but the bourgeois are the prosperous ones that own some of these means of production, right? So they're a growing class of wealthy people. They're intelligent, they're highly educated, and they've got a lot of questions, right? There's even like common impacts in our regular society. The slang word calling someone bougie as being uppity or thinking they're better than you on a financial basis actually comes from the word bourgeoisie, or the bourgeois, all right? So you can call it one of those two words. So say bourgeoisie, and now say bourgeois. Good job, Jaden. All right, so now, anyway, getting into it a little bit more, the other ones are our rural peasants, right? So the rural peasants, oh, remember, again, though, too, very important that you have to remember is that the bourgeois would be road nobles if they bought their way into the nobility, right? Look at these gross little things. All right, so anyway, now, so the next class, the bulk of the third estate, right, is the rural peasants, okay? They're the farmers, the tenant farmers, the day laborers, right? Some of these people are still actually bound to land by feudal contracts, right? Because what is dying out quickly in like Western Europe, but it's still trying to cling on for dear life? That is exactly right, Casey. Feudalism, right? Feudalism is just grabbing on. It's trying to stay relevant, right? So these, what used to be serfs, good job, Kylie, heard you over there, make up the bulk of the third estate, right? But we don't call them serfs anymore because the feudal system is dying out. So we call them rural peasants instead. They are like your regular everyday workers, right? So then you have your lowest of the low. You have your urban workers, right? Poorest members are the unemployed, street vendors, the printers. The very low are your urban workers, right? So as you can tell, the third estate seems very divided in and of itself, right? But the thing about it that's galvanizing the third estate forward is that the third estate hates the first and second estate. The first and second estate pay almost no taxes, whereas the third estate pays taxes on everything, from soap all the way down to salt, like everything. Everything that comes in the docks of Paris, right, to actually be sold in France, not the docks of Paris, Paris is landlocked, more probably like the docks of Marseille, and actually makes its way into the French economy, usually coming from foreign areas that they own directly, places like Haiti, is getting taxed. It's getting taxed heavily because the French government is trying to recoup any money that it can find that it's so far in debt, right? And it's strangling people out, right? You've got rural peasants starving because they're trying to eat black bread and they're dying, right? You've got urban workers who are killing each other in the streets. Crime is at an all-time high in the urban settings. And then the bourgeois who are making some money and becoming prosperous finally and educating their children are being forced to pay a huge dividend of their earning in taxes, right? So here's the screwed up part about the division of French society, which is very important that you jot this down, and this is what makes you honors level, is the understanding that the first and the second estate are staying here in relevance, but with the increase in French taxes, the third estate is going further and further down. So the gap between the wealthy and the poor is growing. Now, some of y'all are immediately saying, but I thought you said the bourgeoisie had some money. Yeah, but we're not making a blanket statement that every single bourgeois member had a huge amount of funds, and it's still creating a giant gap between your wealthiest and your poorest members of society, right? Now, also, here they come. We talked about them for a reason. I can't cover up. Oh, God. Yeah, we're covering Rousseau. JJR is a little annoying. So anyway, Rosé, he's not my favorite. All right, so the Enlightenment ideas are going to hit and get them running, right? So the Enlightenment ideas of social equality from Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's General Will, Diderot's publishing of the Encyclopedia. All these thinkers are going to immediately, their ideas are going to spill out into the streets, and common people, mostly your bourgeois members, are going to start to read them and they're going to start to run with them, right? And then they're going to take these ideas and they're going to put them in pamphlets, and then they're going to give them out in the streets. So even your urban workers and your rural peasants, who now en masse are actually, their literacy rates have been growing ever since the invention of the printing press back in the early 1400s, right? So you're talking about a massive viral spread of ideas. Of Voltaire saying we need a philosopher king, somebody intelligent. Of Diderot saying you have access to intelligence in any form you want. There are 20,000 copies of my encyclopedia running around. Go take it, read for yourself, learn, right? And then Jean-Jacques Rousseau saying, no, we don't owe the government anything. The government owes us, right? These Enlightenment ideas are like the match that was beginning to light the way of social inequality in Europe during this time period, right? So the Enlightenment is the inspiration for revolutions, right? Because people are going to begin to meet in places. Like they're going to go to these things called salons, right? Salons were in these wealthy bourgeois members' homes, and even some road nobles' homes. Do not make the extent or argument that this was purely like second estate versus third estate. This is much more enlightened versus the conservative unenlightened, right? The want for change and the direct no against change, right? So people are beginning to meet in these places like salons, and salons were held in nobility's homes, and especially a lot of the sword nobles. A lot of the sword nobles did not like what was going on either, because they didn't like the fact their classes were being invaded. Right? So, anyway, now, so people buy these other road nobles, right? So, salons, oh God, what is that? What is that about? All right, so, sorry, oh, wait, oh, there it goes. All right, so anyway, now, the salons are where these wealthy people began to invite these like Enlightenment thinkers to discuss how the world was working and how it could be fixed and how it could be a better place. And what everybody would do is they would just crowd around these thinkers and actually just watch them debate with one another. So check this out. So the salons. Don't just show me somebody's hair. No, not that kind of salon. Salon Enlightenment. There we go. All right. So look at this. Look at this. Look at it. Like they would actually just have these massive get-togethers where people would just crowd around these thinkers that would be debating, and they would just be hanging on every word they had and learning too at the same exact time about how their society was simply leaving them behind and leaving behind the needs of people, right? Now, the funny part about it is some of you are like, well, this is in wealthy people's homes. How do the poor people learn about these things? Well, coffee houses was like a bedrock place for a lot of the poorer ends. Coffee houses in England teemed with these ideas about how monarchs abuse their power. And that spread to coffee houses in France, and how like all this word of mouth stuff is going to begin to travel, right? Coffee houses became like the bedrock for the poor, because a lot of these poor people were not being invited to salons, right? And you would be walking through cloudy, tobacco-filled rooms where people would be sipping coffee and talking about how the Enlightenment would lead us in the right direction, right? And then you saw the direct product of the Enlightenment, right? Some people consider this man an Enlightenment thinker. Some people consider Thomas Paine, the writer of, good job, Allison and Aubrey, the writer of Common Sense, to be an Enlightenment thinker. And the American Revolution is considered the torch in the night of the ideas of the Enlightenment pushing forward, right? Wow, that was surprisingly eloquent. I don't do that very often. You're welcome. Now, anyway, so the American Revolution was the forerunner, the leader into the great abyss that was this: can we do it? Can we do this? Can we buck back against a government and say no, right? And the French aided the Americans in that revolution, right? The American Revolution was helped by the French with money and troops. Now, some of you are saying, well, you're telling me that the monarch directly supported a product of the Enlightenment, of this revolution-style thing? They supported it because they didn't like the monarchy. Supported the American Revolution because they hated England. The French people supported the American Revolution because it was a direct bucking back against a powerful government, right? French soldiers and the French people were inspired by the American Revolution ideas, as well as founding fathers like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson and people like that. And then also because France was amidst one of the worst set of financial troubles that you've ever seen. Now, I'm going to read through this quick, but I want you to pause at the very, very end when I get done saying what I got to say, and then you can kind of wrap it all up and make sure you got it, because I don't want this flip to be too long. Now, financial troubles are hitting France hard, right? You've got massive amounts of deficit spending running rampant, right? Now, deficit spending, what that is when a government spends more than it earns, right? You are spending yourself into the negative. It's like a credit card, if you will, right? That the government is just going to swipe it and swipe it and swipe it and just go further and further into debt because they're not worried about the money that they have on hand, because this idea of mercantilism was never fully effective and doesn't even really make a lot of sense. Money is not finite, right? Money is an ever-growing, expanding concept, right? So deficit spending, though, is when you've got no money to back that up anymore because you don't understand how money works, right? So deficit spending was at an all-time high, and the French national debt was at an all-time high because mainly of wars, right? The wars that they were fighting, the French and Indian War lost by Louis XV, the Spanish War, Spanish Secession lost by Louis XIV, the American Revolution where they directly financed an independent person that didn't have any money to pay them back. America didn't have an economy based in anything yet because they were just a brand new country starting out. They didn't even have currency by the time that they became like the United States of America. But then they had to pay you back, right? So 50% of all tax money collected by the French government was paying interest on those debts. That's how bad this financial situation was. Interest, just interest. 17% of that then went to the crown just to pay them. So you're talking about just a chasm of bad money decisions, right? Then to top it all off, this is a very important cause of the French Revolution: bad harvests. You're coming out of this period known as the Little Ice Age, and you've got a series of bad wheat harvests, right? Where bread is becoming scarce, right? And food costs are on the rise. And this is leaving poor people with less money to pay their taxes because their food costs are going up, right? But yet you're demanding more taxation from them, right? And then the first and second estate, even when faced with the decision that you might need to pay more taxes now, or some taxes, refuse to pay them. At one point, there was this thing called the Assembly of Notables, where Louis XVI tried to head off the French Revolution before it occurred, and was like, maybe you should start paying a little bit of taxes, and they refused. They just upright refused. They're like, nope, we don't do that. We don't do that here in France. We don't pay taxes. So this is where we're going to stop, and we're going to pick it back up right after this, okay? So I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.